I'd like to welcome to the stage Karen Gillan.
How's it going, everyone? Sorry, are you really depressed?
I guess I want to start by asking kind of where the genesis of the project, where the idea came from, what drew you to this as your first feature.
Well, I knew that I wanted to write something of my own, and I sort of had that interest for a while. And then I knew that I wanted it to be set in my hometown in Scotland. And then I read the statistic that the suicide rates in the Highlands of Scotland are significantly higher among young men than the rest of Scotland. And so, sorry, I just like ran down here. And I was letting everybody leave the theater. It was really awkward. I was like, so we had this statistic kind of like looming over this beautiful place in the top of Scotland, and that seemed like an interesting contradiction to me, because I grew up there and it's a really idyllic place to grow up. So the film is really an exploration as to maybe why that might be the case in some way.
I wanted to ask who some of your cinematic influences were when you were putting it together, when you were thinking about directing.
Oh, I mean, my cinematic influences in general, I don't know that I sort of tried to emulate anyone or anything in particular for this, but my favorite directors are Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch, Michael Haneke, and Lynn Ramsey, who's Scottish.
That's quite the list. I'm going to open it up to the audience in a second, but I wanted to ask about directing actors, because you have so much experience on the other side of that too. So what is your process with them? How does the work you do when you're not directing inform that, etc.?
Well, it was a really interesting experience on this one because like I was playing the lead role, and so I was directing myself, which meant that there wasn't a lot of discussion, obviously. It was just kind of thinking for a second. It was like, yeah, I agree with you. Great, you're so good at this. No, so it was kind of like weirdly easier, maybe. I'm now starting to think because there wasn't a lot of discussion happening. Then there was other actors in the movie, and the good thing about not playing the lead character and directing is that you get another brain on the character, and they're going to offer you ideas that you couldn't have thought of. So I think next time I would definitely cast someone in the lead role. However, there was a certain freedom that came with playing it myself. I just basically gave myself like loads of different options and then sculpted the performance in the edit. Did I even answer your question? What was your question?
The process of directing the other actors.
Oh yes, not about myself. Well, I love directing the other actors so much. That's one of my favorite parts of directing because I love acting so much. It's don't know what that is. It's just so interesting to me, and so to work with other actors who again offer you up things that you couldn't have thought of, and also it's fun. It was interesting to direct other actors from within the scene. So there was something a bit more organic about that, where usually the director will come up to the actor and have a discussion about it beforehand, and then sort of suggest maybe try this. Whereas I could sort of be like, okay, just be completely present and listen and react to what I'm going to give you as an actor. And then if I needed them to be angry, it wasn't a discussion beforehand. It was me in the scene making them angry for real, and they just needed to be responsive, which was quite nice.
That's great. I'm going to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? I'll start here.
Kind of the opposite of that question. How has now working as a director, how has that affected your process as an actor?
So the question is, how has now having worked as a director affected your process as an actor on other people's projects?
I would probably say I'm easier to work with now, just because I understand all the other parts of the process and what it is like to make a film in its entirety. And as an actor, you're sort of always fighting the bit to maintain the integrity of your role and what you think this emotional arc is, and fighting's the wrong word. It's like a discussion. Whereas now I kind of understand a little bit more about what the director is trying to achieve and how important it is to support the overall vision of the movie, because if you don't do that, you can have something that's a bit more watered down. So I'm just very, very supportive of the filmmaker.
Right here.
Sure. Just kind of a compliment, but also a question. I thought your cinematography was amazing. I was wondering how involved you were with the shots and putting together the different angles of all the shots that you have.
So the question was about your relationship with your cinematographer and how much you were involved in kind of composing the shots versus letting them just kind of run with it.
Yeah, so Ed Lucas is the cinematographer, and he is amazing. He did the short film version of Whiplash, so he is just so good. And I was heavily involved in that. Like, one of the big things I wanted to do was sort of make my mark visually as a filmmaker. And so, you know, I was present for everything, down to like choosing what lenses we wanted, like everything, because, you know, it's all part of an expression of the same thing, like whether it's, you know, the story, it's the dialogue, it's the visuals, it's the composition of the shots, it's, you know, everything. So yeah, I was heavily involved, and I loved that part of the process so much.
Over here.
How long did it take you to write the film, and how long did it take for you to film?
Shall I repeat it? Sure. How long did it take me to write the film, and how long did it take me to film the film? I started writing it about 6 years ago, and then that's why I'm 24 in the film. I'm 30 now. I think it probably took like maybe a year or so. But that was because I was acting a lot in that period and writing in between, or like on sets of other things. So it took a while, and then to make the film, it took 18 days of shooting, and then a very short amount of prep beforehand, because I couldn't get to prep as early as I wanted because of another movie. So I was kind of prepping while shooting this film, Jumanji, which was honestly insane. I was like in the jungle, like, we need to get, like, it was ridiculous.
Back there.
I was just curious why you chose to give her a job behind the cheese counter, as someone who's worked behind several cheese counters and had to turn people away to keep asking for mortadella.
Wait, you have actually had people asking for mortadella?
And I've had to turn them away because we don't sell mortadella.
This has made me so happy. I also share this experience with you. I have worked on multiple cheese counters in my life. In Inverness, I worked behind a cheese counter and made pizzas. And then I moved to Edinburgh to study acting, where I also worked behind another cheese counter. And then the mortadella man, would come all the time and ask for his mortadella with his cheeky little grin. And I was like, this is so specific, I have to use this. I didn't know what mortadella was until we made this movie though. So the joke had a whole other meaning that I did not get.
Was that at Melis's?
Melis's? It was at Sainsbury's. If that means anything. Americans, I don't know.
What inspired and influenced the soundscape of the film?
The soundscape of the film. Well, actually, we didn't anticipate on having all of this thumping party score, which seems weird now because like it's such a huge part of the identity of the film to me. But that was our composer, Kreng, his name is. And he is a Belgian composer, and he just kind of offered it up one day, and I was like, oh my god, this is perfect. It feels like the character. It feels like a hangover is looming. It feels terrible. It feels like you're self-medicating. It's so it felt perfect. And then yeah, a lot of the sound stuff though, like in terms of the sound design, was something that I had thought of beforehand, like the hanging sequence where the rope is creaking and it carries on for ages, that sort of stuff was all like in the script.
We have time for a couple more. I'll go here.
First off, thank you for this film. It's absolutely gorgeous, very therapeutic for me. Going along with that, because of the long process of how a film is made, how do you feel that you've grown from the film? Do you feel that a lot of the ideas in the beginning you still stick with, or do you
you for wanting to sign up to my cult. Oh my god, I feel like I've changed as a filmmaker so much. So I probably make a different movie now, but I needed to make that movie in order to know that. But I'm definitely proud of the movie that we made, but it's like impossible not to develop so much when you go through an experience like that. I would probably say though that what was interesting was I wrote this script, and honestly I paid no attention to any of the stuff that you should. You're supposed to keep your locations down to a minimum to save money, and I just didn't, and nobody told me not to. So there's 30 something when people are so
Writer power.
Writer power, yeah! Don't limit those locations. So a lot of things like that, I've definitely learned a lot, because you spend half of your time moving your crew around, and that's time that you could be using shooting more stuff. So logistical stuff, structure-wise, in terms of writing, I think I've definitely learned a lot from this film. I ended up restructuring a lot of it in the edit, and it was particularly crazy in a headfuck because there's 2 timelines, and so it's what is happening? I'm losing my mind. So yeah, I've learned a lot. So I can't wait to make another movie and put all of that into practice.
And then one more back here on that.
Yeah. What do you make of the paradox of Inverness being such a lovely place and the high rate of suicide, if I heard you?
It really is such a strange thing. I mean, what I feel is that it's a pretty universal story, actually, and probably not specific to Inverness as such. I think you probably have areas like that in America, where it's quite rural, it's secluded, people can feel isolated or cut off from the rest of the world. I think the introduction of just the internet in our lives and looking at all of these, that's not something I tackle in this, but I think that's a huge part of it, is looking at other people's lives and feeling inferior in some way. If you don't have this, then your life isn't as good as somebody else's. And the pressure on men, I think, to be this kind of role in their life where they have to be this provider, and if they're not doing that, then they're failing, which is something I wanted to touch on in the Lee Pace character. So I don't think that's specific to Scotland. I think these are universal themes.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming and bringing the film to us. We're out of time, but thank you so much.